breaks, we break
The
in.
Seat of Honor. Brought to you by Densmore Oil and Bugby Plumbing. He's up late to give you the news you can't get anywhere else early. He fights for truth and justice and the American way. Please welcome our pal from the Paragon Trust Company, the real Tony D. Tony D'Angelo.
All right, here we go. Every Tuesday we bring on the one and only Tony D'Angelo to chat with you about things usually going on here in the state of Connecticut, but often it expands beyond the borders of the unconstitution state. You can find Tony on the X, Tony D'Angelo 7. Of course, you can also watch his YouTube channel, which is always a special treat. Tony, good morning. How are you?
Good morning, Elci. Good morning, everyone, and proud to be among you.
Well, start with this. I hope you had a wonderful Memorial Day. Did you do anything special yesterday?
It's always good to get off the beaten track for about 10 minutes, but thank you for asking, and hope the same.
All right. So I know you wanted to talk about the anti-weaponization funds, but you wanted to go back a little bit in history and talk about it.
I do. And, again, thank you. And as I had mentioned to everybody yesterday, I'm going to go back in history and call this thing down the line. And where it all started, really, unfortunately, was with President Trump. He did, in the beginning, he did more to wrong himself than help himself, and kind of learned a bitter lesson. Go back to January 2016, when he was talking with Chuck Todd of NBC. And Chuck Todd said, "You're going to show your tax returns." And Donald Trump says, "Well, they're being worked on now." In May of 2016, he said he wouldn't release them because he was under audit. And he repeated it over and over. Now, all this did was just, Trump's got something to hide. And it just sort of mushroomed from there. And the thing is, why did he delay? I mean, I'm of the belief that he didn't consider his investors, his partners, probably never considered the question when he said he was going to run for president. I don't know, but unfortunately, this was his first and worst mistake. Again, the man's not perfect. Now, meanwhile, back in the jungle, we go to 2017 and 2018. There's a consulting company called Booz Allen Hamilton, and there is a person working for this consulting company. His name, Charles Edward Littlejohn, and he takes this assignment because he says, "I am going to sink the Trump ship. I'm going to do God's service." And he pretty much takes everything and puts it on a thumb drive, and I'm going to sink these mothers once and for all. Now by doing this, there's it's people that like to make prognostications. There's something on your shelf if you work in this business called the Internal Revenue Code, Section 6103, criminal statute. Can't do that. But he did, and he then went to the New York Times. And he said, "I got the goods on Donald Trump. Meanwhile, there's an idiot congressman, an arguable redundancy, maybe an inarguable redundancy in Massachusetts, Richie Neal, Democrat, who was on the Ways and Means Committee, but he wasn't the chair. And he's like, like the old movie, I'm going to get that sucker. And he kept trying to get the Trump tax returns. Now, of course, he couldn't when the Republicans were in the House majority, but he was trying. Now, this like all kinds of litigation. And basically, we'll come around to Richie Neal in a little bit. But then fast forward a little bit, September 27, 2020, the New York Times has its bombshell and all the terrible things about Trump. Now, I was saying to Jan, I used to be a happy little conservative writer for the e-edition of the New York Times. And that night, when I saw this, I went to the editor and I said, "You realize something? You've just committed tax fraud. You've just broken the Internal Revenue Code. Not only that, but you've broken it in the millions." Well, bye me. But when we read this article, it was largely a huge nothing burger. There was nothing in it. There was stuff that anybody of his age, stage, and stature would be involved in. There was absolutely positively nothing criminal. I mean, the worst thing they said is, we paid $750 in taxes one year. Yeah, he had a huge net operating loss carry forward, things like that. So anyway, nothing criminal ever came of it. Now, at that point, Donald Trump made a second error. He should have sued the New York Times then and sued them off the planet, because this is a very serious thing when you start playing with people's identities. We'll get into that in just a little bit. So finally, we get to, the House changing. Biden is the president. Richie Neal's now chairing Ways and Means, and he produces, or he has cause to produce, the Trump tax returns. And it's the same thing. Lee Elci, if you recall, you were subbing on the Gallagher show, and I went through these things, and there was absolutely, positively nothing there. And look at it this way. If you think I'm lying to you, if there was something there, Trump would be in jail. Guess what? He's not in jail. He's president. Okay. And it was like, okay, that was a whole bunch of millions of dollars in litigation and stuff going back and forth for absolutely nothing. So we finally have a prosecution, okay? We finally have one prosecution, and it's October 23. And who is it? It's Little John, working for Booz Allen Hamilton. And he does 5 years in prison for, quote unquote, a very heinous crime of stealing identities. And this is the whole thing. We come down to the $10 billion lawsuit. How is that fashioned? What is the reason for that? Again, it's that dusty little book in the corner. IRS code 7431, $1,000 per by the government for any person who discloses to another person. Underline the word another person. I'm using my hands, so radio people can't see it. It is a fine of $1,000 on that person. What was the Trump disclosure? It was in the millions. It was everybody that read the Times. It was everybody that worked on it. It was everybody that had their hands on it. It was a multi-million person disclosure, So it's like, how did they get to the $10 million? Well, it was all of these exposures per code of all these people. This is what it is. It's like if I took your tax information and I gave it to, Bob Lazari, John LeBoutelier, and Colonel Simmons, that's $3,000 on me. This went out to millions of people. So this is a figure. People that run around and say, oh, this is that, as Trump's trying to rob the government and all that. This is a figure. It's really an untested theory, but it is grounded in terms of the law. And this is the thing. The Internal Revenue Code or any law is supposed to work for saint or sinner alike. And it's supposed to work for the best of us. It's supposed to work for the worst of us. And the operative thing, do not listen. I don't know what I could tell people. Do not listen to any idiotic politician or journalist telling you that this is Trump robbing the Treasury. It's not. It's how the damned law was written. Okay. I have this discussion with legislators all the time, and they love me for it. I say, look, I don't get to write the damn law. That's the law. You're closer to writing that law than I am. And basically, this kind of stuff goes on and on and on. But the thing is, and this is where I say, it's when you speak on something, you should know something about it. But anyway, if you think, again, I'm going to continue to call this thing down the line. So we have a settlement. And this is the whole thing. The anti-weaponization fund, 1.7.6 billion. How many people are running around saying, oh, well, this is Trump and his cronies and this and that. There is as a part of the settlement, there are two things. This settlement is far from perfect. Okay. There's a lot of questions. We're going to get into that. Again, I'm going to call this thing down the line. But in the settlement, the Trump family is like, people were saying, well, they got a get out of jail free card forever and ever. No, read the damn pronouncement. The forever barred and precluded language only deals with today going backward, does not deal with what goes on to forward. Now, if it were me, if I were working this settlement for the president, I would tell him, Mr. President, do not do such a stupid thing like this, because when you get out and away from this, they will kill you. they will kill your family. Don't mention anything, basically. Let everything be as it is. But, it gave the wrong impression. And that is not, personally, I don't think that's a good thing for the Trump family to do. And the DOJ's confirmed over and over and over, this is retrospective. It's not prospective. But the point being, that's my first thing. Then we'll get into the fund. We got some questions on that. This is not a get out of jail free card. The Trump family has no financial benefit from this fund. Operative thing is the Trumps had their identity stolen. You hate the Trumps, go ahead and hate the Trumps. I'm dealing with the crime of identity stealing at the government. And that's the sort of thing. $1,000, I think it should be $100,000 per person. I say to people, this is worse than firing a gun at somebody because it goes on. Your wound may heal, but this kind of thing never heals. And again, I don't think Trump made the right decision when he said that this thing is not, this is going back forward and we're going to wipe the slate clean. They are only going to get him when the door takes him on the way out. That's kind of the nutshell. So I don't think there's any saints here. I don't think there's any sinners, but that's how we got to where we got with this. We're going to discuss the operation of the fund in a second.
I got some questions for you on this. If
sure.
you don't mind. I got like 4 questions, and if they lead into your second part, I apologize. But let me just go from beginning to the end here. I looked like you looked, and it doesn't seem like you know much more than I do, but it doesn't seem like there was much in his tax returns that he should be ashamed of. Why not just release it in the beginning?
Big mistake on his part. Big. Because I don't think he considered the question, and then the Trump bluster got in the way, and unfortunately it got him in a bunch of soup.
Okay.
A bowl of soup. So
again, you had just pointed out that the IRS can do what they want moving forward, but going back, they can't look, they can't audit. That seemingly is that sounds to me like he's hiding something, Tony. I mean, can you explain that a little bit more clear for me? Because I'm just trying to figure out why they would make that agreement. I mean, maybe the tax returns that he didn't turn over are fine, but the ones 3 years prior to that are not. So can they go back as far as they want, or they can't go back anymore at all?
They can't go back anymore at all. And I think it was really a case of him, feeling that his family was hurt and feeling that, the people in his organization were hurt to quote unquote stop the torture, basically. And I think that's what was really what was fashion. I would have done the settlement differently, honestly, truthfully, but I probably would have gone ahead with the fund. We're going to talk about the operation of the fund in a second, but I wouldn't have done it exactly the way he did it.
Okay, the fund. Then I have 2 quick ones, and if you want to just go off on that afterwards, feel free.
Sure.
Who can make a claim? And in the end, it's still my money, right? So whether or not it's $10 billion or 1.776, eventually the people who are getting paid out, it's coming from the taxpayers, correct?
Well, yes, it's coming from the whatever you want to call it, the fund at the Justice Department, which is set aside for wronged citizens. But yes, it is your money, and yes, it is my money. And we're going to talk about the claims process because this is the whole thing. We're here. And the way the language of the fund is written, okay, it is for it's for anybody who's quote unquote wronged by the weaponization of government. Michael Cohen, of all people, is going to file a claim against this fund. Gives you an idea. Now, what happens when you get there? There are the 5 commissioners, and people are saying, oh, yeah, it's Trump and his buddies, and Todd Blanche is his lawyer, and. Let me tell you about how the settlement fund works. I've been dealing with the Victims' Compensation Fund ever since it started. Oh, boy, it's coming up on, 2001 to now, right? 25 years. And the administrators, the 9/11 fund and for the Agent Orange fund was Judge Kenneth Feinberg. And they see very little of what goes on beneath them. Now, Kenneth Feinberg at 9/11 actually learned his lesson in Agent Orange, where he didn't do so hot, frankly, but he said, I'm going to actually get out and talk to people. But he only got to talk to maybe 15% of the people affected. So when people make their claims against this fund, now a lot comes down here. Like, what about the guy that hit a police officer and broke a window on January 6th? That's a legitimate thing. When the claim form goes in, is there going to be a checkbox there? Were you convicted of a crime? Provide details. And would that be a disqualifying event? That is a real and open question. But however, the people making the decision, they're estimating, Elci, about 10,000 claims will be made. Now, 5 people are going to do 10,000 claims. I can't get one person to do 5 tax returns, basically. That ain't going to happen. They will hire what they call an independent claims administrator. How independent is this person? I don't know. They might have a horrible case of TDS and they just might start denying claims, or they may call it down the line. Remains to be seen. We haven't seen the documents. We haven't seen the regulations. We haven't seen the pronouncements. The point being is this is not a Cracker Jack box going right out. And the other thing, and this is important, okay, if you feel you were wronged on a tax matter, and you go to the auditor gives you a bum deal, you can go to something called the Office of Appeals. And you can ask for a supervisor, and you can ask for, quote unquote, a fresh look, and you can ask for mediation. Here you are one and done. If you screw up this form, if the quote unquote classifier, who is the independent administrator, doesn't like your looks, you're done. You're done. You can have the most legitimate claim on earth. And the other thing is that it all comes down to how they do the mechanics of it. Now, the claims that are quote unquote, shall we say, not administratively denied are going to go up to this 5-person board, but they're going to go up with recommendations. I think we should pay this much. And there's an incentive here, or put it this way, to the point of your money and my money. There is no incentive here for government to be generous and just start lavishing money on somebody. In 9/11, with the Victim Settlement Fund, there was a decision every single affected family had to make, which is, well, do I take this fund in settlement, or do I sue the government for which really was a very complex series, in my estimation, of just gross negligence? And if you don't believe there was gross negligence, then why was the government making a settlement with everybody? Because you had to give up your right to everything. So there's no incentive here for government to be generous, basically. And this follows what it was, the Keepseagle thing, that the Keepseagle settlement. And the commissioners themselves are going to see very little, but there needs to be an assurance that these people who committed real, honest to goodness crimes do not get themselves, a large bonus. But we got to see what happens. The screening, we have to get a look into that. And the important thing, we've got like 1 or 2 minutes left. I just want to make clear. This all started because Donald Trump should have done this better at the outset, and unfortunately would have spared himself a lot of trouble. My personal view is that, $10 billion, or this should be $100 billion. Stealing somebody's identity, even if you hate Donald Trump, to me is one of the worst possible things you can do. And then there's 2 sub-issues. We had this issue in Connecticut with the Boston Consulting contract. I've been through that time and time again. Every single political person I gave this to ran from it like the plague, basically. Wanted nothing to do with it. Completely took our information. Then after that, we started having all these identity breaches. We weren't supposed to hear about that either. But the bigger thing, the bigger thing, it's like, there's so many things. There are so many things with respect to what we could and should be doing. There's great things that Trump has proposed. in the OBBBA. I was writing them the other night. Trump accounts, taxes aren't raised. 100% depreciation, qualified opportunity zones, no taxes on tips, overtime, and Social Security. Really good economic plans that the state needs. We get so balled up in all this crap. This is what I'm interested in. I'm interested in, making the country prosperous and saving it, not who's going to get what out of a fund. Yes, the fund is important. Yes, we have to make sure that, bad people aren't getting money. But basically, truthfully, it's like there are no winners here. This is just the stuff that, keeps politicians and journalists in business.
Tony D'Angelo, find him on the X. As always, Tony D'Angelo 7. Of course, you can find him right here each and every Tuesday morning at 7:05. He's also got his own YouTube channel. What are we in store for Thursday, Tony?
I don't know about the show, but we got a great movie about has-beens, me being one. Sunset Boulevard, made in 1950. I'm still big. The picture's got small. My little picture over here.
All right, brother. Thank you, Tony. Appreciate it. The great Tony D. Make sure you watch that on Thursday. All right, we got to go. We'll come back. Flax next. Liz Karanowitz, Jason Guidone around the corner. All coming up here on The Big Show. Stick around.